So I want to start by talking a little bit about why I got into teaching this particular workshop, because it's a very tough workshop to sell. Not many people want to come spend 2 days talking about death, and they think it's going to be sad, they think it's going to be depressing, they think they're going to cry through the whole thing. And it doesn't matter if you do. I mean, you're welcome to cry as much as you want to cry. However, what I find is that people walk out of here after 2 days just with the exact opposite, in that they feel uplifted and they feel like they're more in touch with their life. And there's a reason for that, and there's a reason why I chose to teach this. It's hard. I don't get full classes because people don't want to come. And so I keep looking at this and saying, how can I better market this workshop? So it's hard to describe what it is about. So, and the reason why people are not drawn to coming is because humans, by and large, have a huge fear of death. And it's really taught to us and handed down generation after generation that death is something unknown. It's something, if we don't know something, if it's this mystical kind of thing that we don't know, then we tend to fear that. And all the years that I've been communicating with animals, which for me professionally has been since 1987, but I've been doing this my whole life. And I'm going to discuss a little bit about how I come to sit here to talk to you about death, not as some kind of an expert, but I would say as somebody who's asking questions and who's deliberately seeking insight from animals, from humans, as to what this is about. Because truly there is nothing to fear, but we are taught by society that there are basic principles of death that nobody knows about, except for maybe a few higher ups in the church or higher ups in the spiritual sense that probably understand and guide us. So this is not an anti-church or anti-religious statement. I don't mean this to sound this way whatsoever. I think there's a place for religion and spirituality that is very important. But one of the things that's built into that is fear and keeping people afraid. Because if you have the ultimate control over people, if you control what happens to them, what they do in their lifetime to better themselves when they die, or so that you don't go to hell, to put it bluntly, if you do certain things, we're taught, if you do certain things and you stick to certain principles and you follow the rules and you're good, you will get to heaven. And if you don't, well, a lot of bad things are going to happen. So we tend to look at death then as being something like, whoa, this is like really bad. Yet here's the truth. The simple truth, and it's very simple, is everybody dies. It's not something strange. We all die. And just like everything else in nature, and in life, we have built-in ways of dealing with that. It's not a shock to living things to come to the end and say, oh my goodness, now there's death, what do we do with that? I guess a better way to say this is, and a blunt way to say it is, that all bodies know how to die. There's a built-in mechanism inside of us biologically that just like we are born, we also die. And there's a process that our bodies go through, there's a process that we go through spiritually that is a natural process. And we are so alienated from that process in our society that it's not even talked about. Instead, we've replaced it with a belief in a certain religion or spiritual principle or whatever you want to put on it about, or what's handed down through your family as to that forms your belief on what happens when you die. So the animals don't have that. So what I've noticed after many, many, many years and talking to literally hundreds of thousands of animals since 1987 is that I've never met one animal, not one, that's afraid to die in any circumstance. Now, it doesn't mean I don't talk to animals that aren't afraid of how they will die. That's different, and we will talk about the difference with that. But the process of death itself, they do not fear. They also don't worry about it. They don't spend their lives worried about what's going to happen and how they're going to die. There's also not any kind of social structure that they have that tells them if you better act a certain way or when you die, bad things are going to happen to you. They're free from that. And because they're free from that, what I have noticed over the years is many aspects about animals that are what I think attracts all of us to animals. For example, it is, for those of you who have animals, which is everybody sitting here has had animals or has animals, you know that animals love unconditionally. They absolutely love who they love, they don't worry about it, and they let you know it, and they show it, and they're free to show and express their love to you. I hear this all the time, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, because in the animal welfare industry, in the animal rescue, animal welfare, whatever, animal rights, there is a concept or a thought out there that, or the belief or the premise that humans are actually horrible and that animals love unconditionally and are actually wonderful. Now I believe that animals are wonderful and love unconditionally, but here's the thing that I have gotten from the animals all these years: so are humans. And we are no different than the animals are. Why would we be different? Why would this life form suddenly be different than the elephant or the whale or the dog or the cat or the bird or the flea? That's a tough one to go there, but it's true. So, what makes humans different is we have bought into a notion or a belief or an understanding that not that we are better than the rest of the world, but actually we as humanity have bought into the belief that we are less than and we are separate from the rest of the world. And it doesn't seem that way at the onset of when you're looking at people doing all of these horrible things to animals and doing what we do. We're doing those because we're simply unconscious to what is happening. And if humans would become more aware and conscious of ourselves and also what the rest of nature expresses and feels, we would be the unconditional, loving beings that we are actually meant to be. Humans by nature, just like any of the animals, are meant, we are pre-programmed, and it's in our DNA to love unconditionally, to not be judgmental. That is who we are at our base and at our best. What's happened is that if you throw fear in there, strongly into the mix, and say, if you don't do things to this particular level, you're going to go to a bad place when you die. That is like a hammer hanging over the heads of humanity, and it dictates a lot of what choices we make, dictates a lot of what we do. So why did I choose a workshop on death and dying? Because it's not the only fear that humans have, but it's one of the biggest ones. Nobody wants to confront a big fear. Nobody likes to go into the unknown or to the uncertain and walk in and talk about it. But the very truth of the matter is there is nothing to be afraid of. So I'm not saying I sit here without my own fears, because I have lots of them. But the difference is to become aware of what your fears are, to become aware of what your beliefs are and how your beliefs generate or dictate your life. So I'm going to give you lots of examples of this, because what we tend to do as humans is we then look at the animal experience through our own belief system, and we put our values on them instead of listening to them. We do that with each other too. We don't listen to each other. So I hear this all the time, that humans are at the top of the chain, because we communicate. And that's what makes us better. Animals can't talk. They obviously are lesser than humans because we get all this communication. But humans, I will sit here and tell you this from the depth of my core, humans are the worst communicators on the planet. Everything else communicates far better than we do. And we don't listen. We don't listen to each other. And we may do a lot of talking, but we don't do a lot of actual communication. We don't do a lot of listening. I don't sit here trying to prove this to you. that I don't feel a need to prove it that I do it. I've proven it to myself, that I know it's real. But what I would like to share, and the reason why I chose to teach this workshop, is that if you know what's out there, you will actually start having experiences yourself. And you can start to understand that there's more to life than what you're looking at here. There's a whole world beyond. And that if it does one thing to get you to be less afraid, it will increase your life here. It'll enhance your life here. Your life will be better. Because if we live our lives completely afraid of what's going to happen at the end, we're not living our life. We're only living part of it. And we're afraid of embracing a whole other part of our lives. So the point of this workshop is to hopefully just get you thinking and looking at other aspects of what could be out there. Like I say, I know it's real for me. I'm not sitting here to prove anything for you, but all I ask is for you to have an open mind and heart this weekend as we go through these experiences and stories, just to see something bigger that's going on in the world, and to see and understand. And to bring this back full circle, the human heart has the capacity to hold an enormous amount of love and compassion. We are a species that is built to be compassionate. By our very nature, we are compassionate. Anything less than that is the lie that we've bought into, that we are separate from everything else. If we understood that we are not separate from the animals, we're not separate from the trees, we're not separate from nature, from anything, then we would understand that we are as compassionate and loving and non-judgmental as all of this, and we wouldn't be acting the way we are. The way we act, the reason we're acting the way we are as the species that we are, the reason why we're capable of doing unspeakable, cruel things, like to the elephants and to the whales and to dogs and cats and horses and all the things that we do, is because we're asleep at the wheel. We're unconscious to who we are. If we would consciously be aware of who we are, what we are, we would not be able to treat others that way. And through my talking about death and dying, it's the doorway into this. It's one doorway, there are lots of others, but it's one doorway into this path that makes us look at ourselves as being different than what we think we are. Because it's not what we think. And if all of us, if there are only 7 of us, 8 of us in this room right now, that's a very small percentage of what's on the planet as far as humans go. But if all of us could, in this room, hold the space that says humans are incredibly loving, beautiful creatures, it does spread out. And if people could start seeing who they are and seeing ourselves and accepting who we are, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. The animals hold, the elephants hold that trauma of what's being happened from the poachers, with the poachers and what's happening. They hold that in their bodies right now because they are trying to, they're trying to process it on a grand scale. But animals also are trying to hold the space, desperately trying to hold the space for us to wake up and understand who we are. Because, and they're amazing to hang in there as long as they're hanging in there with us. But we're the only species on the planet right now that is in this cycle of really not seeing who we are and really doubting who we are and really buying into this fear of something out there bad is waiting for us. And instead of living the truth of the beauty of the world and what's out there, and that it doesn't end here, that there's way more after this, it doesn't end here, and that we are in total control of our own lives. We are in total control of our deaths. You will not die before you're ready to die. So this is a concept that is very difficult for people to get. And we're going to talk more about this in the next day, because somebody here, maybe all of you, will come up with examples of how you're sure somebody died before they were ready to die. Because you've seen it. You've experienced it. Well, you have. You've experienced it from your perspective, but not necessarily from the being who left.